This section is a simplification of the Code of Federal Rules and Regulations, the CFRs, on evaluation. And the reason we did this was so that you could understand it a little bit better. What we've done is outlined the very formal rules and regulations and kind of broke them down so they're more understandable. So take a look at it, see if it works for you. If it does work for you and you think you have a good grasp of evaluation, then you can move on to another section. If you want to see the actual Code of Federal Regulations and we go through it and highlight different sections, you can see the section following this one also. But like I said, if you got a good grasp, you can move on, take a look at the notice of initial evaluation. Okay, initial evaluations must precede the provision of special education related services. That is, an evaluation has to be in place. You can't just start providing special education and related services prior to there being an initial evaluation, because you really don't know what you should be providing at that point. So you have to wait for the evaluation in order to start up special education and related services. The initial evaluation can be requested by either the parent or the school, or it can happen through the child find activities, that is, that you've identified through screenings of some sort of possible disability, and therefore you start the evaluation process. Parents must consent to an initial evaluation. Once they consent, it needs to be done within 60 days. States have different timelines, but none of them can be later than 60 days. The evaluation must determine whether there's a disability or not, and it must determine the educational needs of the child. As we stated before, parents must give consent, therefore notice must be given to the parents that an evaluation is going to occur. So generally what this is what you'll get is a notice and consent form. And what it does is it notifies you that the school sends you a form that notifies you that an evaluation is going to take place and that you consent to that evaluation. You sign it and send it back to them. You have that form, so if you want to look down at that section, you can actually take a look at the form. An evaluation must use a variety of assessment tools, including information from the parents. They cannot use any single method to evaluate. That is, what Congress wanted was several different tests from several different angles and to gather information from all over to come up with a good solid evaluation of where the child's at and what the child needs to progress educationally. You must use technically sound instruments. The evaluation must not be racially or culturally discriminatory, must be administered in the native language or other mode of communication, whether that would be sign language or something of that. These two here were enacted to ensure that we evaluate what the child knows and what the child doesn't know and what the child's abilities are and where he's running into problems. We don't want to know that they're having problems with the English language, but rather we want to see where they're at developmentally. The test must be valid and reliable, administered by trained and knowledgeable personnel, and it must be in all areas related to the disability. If appropriate, sometimes you already have an evaluation or the child has been in school for a while. You need to review existing evaluations, go through those, any current assessments that have been done, either school-wide assessments or district-wide assessments, to see where the child comes out on those. Any observations by teachers or other service providers as to what they've been seeing in the classroom, and to review if there's a former IEP and you're doing an evaluation, you can look at present levels of performance, or like it said here, you can talk to teachers to get reviews on how the child is doing in the classroom, and get that from providers also. And use all this to determine whether the child has a disability and to determine whether the child needs special education or related services. If the answer to both of these two questions is yes, then we go ahead and set an IEP meeting and determine eligibility and go ahead and put services in place. But the next step would be to determine eligibility. The section after this is the actual Code of Federal Regulations if you want to take a look at it. There's also some forms after that if you want to take a look at those. If you're comfortable where you're at, you can move on to eligibility or onto the IEP, whichever you prefer.